Hello, and welcome back. Around the Bonfire. It is a pleasure to have you here for the show that is poking the Chicago Fire with a stick and asking them to do something. Today, the transfer window is open. Today, on day of release, I should say, the transfer window is officially opening on the summer window in MLS, and we are here to talk about not only that, but the Chicago Fire do play a game this week against the New Jersey Energy Drinks, so that's going to be an exciting time. I've got the whole gang with me once again. There's a couple in a row that we've been rolling with it. I've got Tim, Alan, and DJ here. Fellas, can I get a quick sound off from either of you? You all know the order. How are we feeling today?
I'm just going to go ahead and say that, clarify for anyone from the Fire that may be listening to this before the press conference, I will not be bringing a stick to the press conference, nor poking anybody. So I just want to get that out there. I don't want to get searched by security on my way in.
I won't bring a stick, but I will bring a sax to the game because I play sax. Okay.
Yes, and Alan is always a good advocate for practicing safe sax.
I have no comments.
A man of few words, but many slices of pizza, DJ. Thank you very much. Great to have you guys, as always. As we said before. Yeah, cookies too. There we go. As I said before, exciting times today as the MLS summer transfer window or secondary transfer window, however you'd like to label it, opens on day of release. That's Thursday, July 24th. We'll discuss that a little bit more later on. We're going to talk a little Chicago Fire, New York Red Bulls. So we're going to dive into a touch of news before we do that. First and foremost, no major announcements on some of the news surrounding MLS switching to the fall to spring schedule that has been talked about. There's a board of directors meeting or board of governors meeting in Miami this week, but nothing has happened quite yet. As of recording, we're waiting for the All-Star game to kick off, so no exciting news, although I'm sure Philip Zinkernagel's eventual bicycle kick awesome winner Golazzo was great. I'm going to put that one in now.
In the cowboy boots too. It was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. He's so talented. He's so and beautiful. Anyway, moving it along there. Speaking of guys who are playing a game midweek instead of just having a bye week for their All-Star game, a few updates on availability surrounding some guys who may or may not be important. First and foremost, Carlos Terán participating in practice once again. Sam Rogers was not with the first team in practice, unfortunately. Jason Shukaluk, Vitaly Hulut, and John Alpha Diouf training with the first team as well. Kind of interesting to see how those three actually end up rolling out. John Alpha Diouf, the only one of particular note due to the center back shortage the Chicago Fire are currently facing. And Sergio Orhel will return in this match after serving a one-game suspension for yellow card accumulation. A little bit of Chicago Fire 2 and Academy news. 16-year-old, I believe David Melendez, starts in net for Chicago Fire 2. He recorded 13 saves in a W in his MLS Next Pro debut. So massive day for the young man. Massive shouts to him. And as always, it is wonderful to see the goalkeeper Academy just churning out prospects year after year after year. It doesn't seem to slow down. And then along with that... Along with that, Robert Turdine making a start for the MLS Next East All-Stars on Tuesday night. I got to see a cool photo op with him and Philip Zinkernagel, so exciting to see the young gun standing out. And then the All-Star game, as mentioned, is tonight. MLS versus Liga MX. Philip Zinkernagel will feature. He's going to start on the bench, so he won't be in the starting 11 for MLS tonight. I didn't put this in the outline, but fellas, can I get a quick score prediction for the All-Star game and who you think bags the eventual winner for MLS, as I'm sure we're all going to pick? I always start with you.
I'm going to say 5-3 for MLS. Why the hell not? Philip Zinkernagel.
I'm going to go ahead and say... because you did catch us off guard here. Let's say 2-1. I'm not sure who's going to be scoring on either side, but I'm of course going to say 2-1 MLS.
2-1 All-Star game. That's well, we apologize for anyone that had to watch that snooze fest.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to say 4-4 goes to PKs and MLS wins on PKs.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, damn. I was going to say like 3-1, but DJ, I like your idea. I'm actually going to go with you there. I like that little draw. Send it directly to PKs in true MLS Liga MX matchup fashion. Love that.
Brad Stuver with the winning PK. Austin FC legend Brad Stuber.
Well, what was it? Takaoka winning the skills challenge last night with the crossbar.
Yep.
Yeah, from 25 yards or whatever it was. So that was actually a lot of fun to watch. Cool to see. Even if I Show Speed might have showed some people up at certain points.
That was fun to see.
It.
I really loved it. I loved seeing Luna hyping him up as well. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, 100%. It's a good time, which actually brings me to my only gripe, and then we'll move on. I hate that this is midweek. This should be a week off. This should be like a full week of festivities. Give guys a rest and give me a little All-Star game on the weekend. I may be biased there. I think it would be fun. Tim's already shaking his head. Tim hates me this week.
Yeah, it should. And it was like kind of weird, like talking to Philip Zinkernagel after the Fire's win in Montreal. And I because one, it's like, does he even did he figure out what the All-Star game was? Because when we talked about it with him a couple of weeks ago before he was named, he didn't seem to really have a good idea. But I wanted to say All-Star break, and I started saying that. I said, well, it's usually called a break, but for you, it just is another game midweek sandwiched between the league games on the weekends, right? And it's like, so now, Zinkernagel, as well as like most of the best players in the league, minus some ones that are injured and some ones that decided they couldn't be bothered, have to just play more, and they don't really get the moment to enjoy their accomplishments. And we don't take a minute off to reflect and like see like the talent that this league can bring to bear. Like some of it's big names and some of it's like names that's domestically grown, that has, everyone has interesting stories and how they got there. Like just making it not on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday would be really welcome.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's going to sound counterintuitive, but I do think like baseball does All-Star Weekend the best. And even baseball, like it's midweek, but they make it an event. You get 6 days off in a sport where you play every day. Like this should be a celebration of the league, a celebration of the sport. I love the idea of MLS Liga MX. I think it's actually a lot of fun, like, because it's supposed to be fun, right? So it just sucks they're not really featuring it in the way they should. You look at those stands in this game, it's like nobody's there. And I get the game's not starting yet, but still, nobody's there. But hey, that's life. I'll stop complaining now.
I'm just hoping that in the future, once the league grows even more and more, where the attention is more focused in All-Star, that we can return to East versus West. That's
or in some way they at least get East versus West now, because like 30 teams, like it used to be when the league was like 12, 14 teams, like every team would have at least one representative almost, like, unless the team was terrible and bound for the wooden spoon. And even then they usually found a way to sneak a guy in. And now you've got, like the Fire went multiple seasons without an All-Star except for a commissioner's pick. And it didn't feel like he was there because of what, like Kai Kamara, that is, because of what he was doing with the Fire so much as what he had done in his career. And like, it's just, there's too many guys that are, frankly, too good in the course of a season for it to be limited to just one roster, even if the roster has gotten bigger.
Yeah, 100%. Although, to be fair, guys, I think East versus West, the East would probably win like 7-2. And it would
this year, but like in like 2021 or 2022, like I don't really know that would have been the case, right? Like it felt like maybe like the league was more like West focused then, and like it'll probably switch back and forth a little.
You say that, but see, here's the thing: All-Star games are the type of thing where you don't place bets because crazy crap happens.
Oh, I know. Liga MX beat MLS All-Stars last year. Like that's
Hey, look, there we go. All I
mean, my God,
is
Caleb Porter beat what European
team.
giant did he beat when he coached the All-Star team? That one year, I think it was the last time that MLS beat a European opponent. Like Caleb Porter beating a like Champions League caliber team. Like that is the craziest thing that has happened in this league's history, and it's a league of crazy things that happen every week.
Last one was Tottenham Hotspurs. That was not it.
Of course.
Okay, so no, not Tottenham Hotspurs, because I said a good team.
Ooh, Tim, that is the reigning Europa League champion.
What's wrong with
it was Bayern Munich.
Oh, what? Right, are we going to do a basketball pod where we talk about who won the NIT?
Yeah, we are, Tim, and we're also going to talk about who won the NBA Cup, because secondary trophies still matter. Okay. R.I.P. my boy Ange.
No, genuinely.
Yeah, well, you're not going to go to the parade after the Fire win League's Cup in 2037? Come on, Tim.
The Lionel Messi League's Cup presented by
the DeAndre Yedlin League's Cup. Thank you very much.
I wish that would. I would go to the final every year if that were the case, man.
Yeah, never forget that was the one solid Messi ever did for any person in MLS was he let DeAndre Yedlin raise the trophy with him because he was actually Miami's captain. We've lost the plot a little bit here. Sorry, everybody. Point is, All-Star games are exciting. MLS should do more to promote their All-Star game, make it more fun, put it on actual TV so people can watch it.
Amen.
But there is a game that does count this weekend, and not just for making fun of people who talk about MLS. Sorry, Austin, you're going to have to blur that. And that is Chicago Fire heading to New Jersey to take on the team named after a very famous energy drink, the New York Red Bulls. Fire taking on the second matchup of the season against New York. They lost 2-1 in New York last time out. Just for a little bit of recap, a little bit of background, Fire took an early lead off of Jonathan Bamba goal, of course, an assist from Philip Zinkernagel. But Red Bull added 2 of their own before the end of the half, including some really nice work there. To take the lead, they ended up hanging on. That was another game that Sam Rogers left late in the first half with an injury, and it was one that featured a very heavily rotated side. It was no Jack Elliott, no Brian Gutierrez, no Mauricio Pineda. Justin Reynolds made the start at right back, so definitely not a full-strength Fire team that allowed 2 goals to New York Red Bulls. We fast forward. They face off this weekend in Chicago. Both teams worse for wear. They're right next to each other in the playoffs, kind of straddling either side of the playoff line. New York Red Bull currently 1 point ahead of the Fire. Makes it a real 6-pointer, right? New York Red Bull have won 1-7. Fire have won 2-8. So it's a little bit of who stops the skid first and holds on to that final spot. Tim, I'll let you kind of start. Guys, why don't you talk like big picture for a second before we get too granular in terms of how we feel this matchup plays as opposed to the last. Because I think from my perspective, right, just to kick us off, that was a winnable game, right, in New York. The Fire could and should have won that game with 4 or 5 starters missing. And
I think that's the thing. It's one of a number of games where like you could say like the Fire could have won it, should have won it, and they didn't win it, right? Like you can say that. You can say the game in DC at the game against DC at home at the season like home opener. You could say that about the game in Atlanta last week, right? And like the story of the season will not end the way that the Fire want it to if that becomes the plot line of these like coulda, shoulda, coulda, didn't things. Like the Fire have been, close in virtually every game that they've been in lately. Like they did have a couple of, pretty bad losses out there. Like the one against Nashville is going to like sting some people, even if the Fire, put up 7 against DC after that. But it's, it will be a season of missed opportunities. If you don't get the points against team you should get the points against, right? And so they did against Montreal this time. They dropped 2 points against Montreal at home previously. And like you start looking and like those are some of the differences. And like when you look at the MLS standings right now, right? Like think about the Fire's 2 victories, both of which were comfortable. I think that those were probably 2 of the more complete games the Fire put together in different ways, even if the ending of the game, the last game was not exactly the way the Fire would have wanted it. The Fire, got 6 points away from Charlotte, and Charlotte did not get any points against the Fire. Charlotte are currently 3 points ahead of the Fire in the standings. If it was the other way around, Charlotte would have 42 points and the Fire would be like 26. And I mean, actually, ironically, in the same place in the standings because that's how big the gap has become. But like they would really not be within striking range of a playoff spot right now, which they are. And it's about those kinds of games. You call it a 6-point game. And they just need to start getting those results, especially at home, because that's where it's eluded them more than anywhere else. But it doesn't really matter where they get them. They just need to start getting results against teams that they have the capability to do it against. And they were, let's be honest. Like, I think it was 1 for 2 last week, and it needs to be 100% this week.
Amen. I say to that. I feel like they definitely, first of all, win at home, period, because Soldier Field should be the fortress that it's always, that it's meant to be.
And
because it's just blah, 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 whatever. It won't be a problem in 2.5 years or whatever. And it's great that we're winning away, but home, it's just crazy how this team has exceeded expectations on so many fronts, whether it's the amount of goals, whether it's individual players doing very well, a round of applause for Philip Zinkernagel especially, or the fact that we're doing well away, blah, blah, blah. People, a majority of the Fire fan base are going to be there at home. And when you get, how many wins do they have at home now? Someone remind me.
Just still two, right? It's two and 10, right?
And it's like all of that goes out the window because the fans that are showing up to games are still feeling maybe a little bit the same, because unless you are traveling to those away games and you're seeing those results, like it's not the same as like being there. You have to give the fans something even. Give them something at home, essentially. So
that's a really good. So like, you talked about Philip Zinkernagel being an all-star, right? And like when, I don't have the secondary assist in front of me, but like 10 goals, 10 assists for him on the season. First Fire player to ever do a double-double in that respect in the team's history, including when they were winning trophies. And only 2 of the goals have come at home. Only 1 of the primary assists has come at home. And like, so as good as Zinkernagel has been, that's been an experience that the vast majority of Fire fans, except for the precious few that go to away games and travel, it's been something they've seen on TV and not something that they've seen with their own eyes. And so like just giving the fans at home or like in home games at the team stadium the chance to celebrate how good he's been and how good players like the improved play of Hugo Kuipers and all the other, good stories around the team. It's not something that they've experienced the same way because it hasn't happened in front of their actual eyeballs.
Exactly. Plus, it's the summer. It's the summer where more fans, more especially casual fans, more people that haven't ever been to games or usually only go when the weather is doing fairly well. This is where they want, you need to win them. And you need to win points in order to win them over into the fan base. Now, because, of course, when we do get the new stadium, the capacity is like 22,000 or somewhere around that ballpark. It's going to fill, you want it to be filled. You want it to maybe even expand in the future. So it's home is very important because, like I mentioned, even though they have exceeded expectations on so many fronts, the fact that it's not those expectations aren't at home as well is what sort of is deflating this tire a little bit. That's why, especially when it comes to this game, it's
although to be honest though, like I don't know if they really like. I think the expectation from a lot of fans, I think that no matter what, how well the team plays, how many goals some people get, how many entertaining games there are along the way, people are going to look at this as a disappointing season if there isn't the postseason at the end of it, even if it is just a postseason appearance, because that's a tangible piece of evidence that the Fire have done something that they have not done in way too long. And did not do under like the last front office regime whatsoever. And I think that to do that, though, they need to start winning these games that are winnable, that are against opponents that are near them in the standings. And like right now, like the Fire are aiming to be like just mathematically like right on the playoff line. And it's a coin toss whether they'd be in or out. And so they need to start getting these results against teams like the Red Bulls, which they haven't always gotten the wins that they've, really needed against these kinds of opponents. In order to see themselves there. And I think that's what this means. And it's coming before a 2-week break, right? So it's ending on a high note and then having everyone come back fresh, maybe with some new faces or not. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But like, once you're back, as opposed to, okay, we're back. Now we've got to battle our way up into the playoffs.
Yeah, look, it's I think in some ways, Tim, it's as simple as This is the one team ahead of you to make the playoffs, right? And to your point, you need something tangible to take from this year. It's why for majority of the season, in my head, Greg Berhalter is going to go all out to win the U.S. Open Cup. He decided to punt the U.S. Open Cup. That happened, right? The only tangible success he could take from this season would be a playoff appearance, right? If not a playoff victory. And almost to that point, you look at who else would be hypothetically in that play-in. It's Charlotte, who you've beaten twice. NYCFC, who you've played once, is a winnable game. Went down to 10 men. It was kind of up and down. Or potentially Orlando, although they have separated slightly, who you drew once and beat once, right? All of those are winnable games. You will be given the opportunity to go out and win that play-in and go up against a Cincinnati, a Nashville, a Philadelphia. Do you love your chances there? Maybe not, but you take every opportunity you can get. And in a one-off tournament, who knows who can win? So I think it really comes down to
it's best of 3. But
No, I mean once you get past the plan.
No. Once you get past the plan, it's a best of 3.
Why did I have in my? Okay, I just had my.
No. It's a one-off play-in, and then it's a best of 3. But yeah, your point's well taken.
For some reason, I had it switched in my head.
But I think that the short version of it is this, though, right? Like the Fire, no team behind the Fire can catch up to the Fire on Saturday. If the Fire beat the team ahead of them, they are guaranteed to wake up for the next 2 weeks looking at the standings and being in a postseason spot. If they do not beat the Red Bulls, they are guaranteed that they will not be. It's simple. And you can say, like, sure, like there's a lot of mathematical ways the Fire can make the playoffs if this game doesn't matter. It's 1 game out of 34 and all of that stuff. But in the end, you have to get the job done against teams in front of you. And this is the team in front of them. And I think it matters for all of those reasons combined.
To that end, they could also be as high as 7th. If NYCFC were to lose to FC Dallas, they would jump based on goals for, just for reference. So even more so, right? It's a tenuous hold, but a hold at that. So yeah, just kind of something to think about from that perspective as well.
The other thing that I think maybe is worth it, and I don't know how much more we're going to talk about this game. I know we've got to do a score prediction in it, but this kind of ties into our later conversation. The Red Bulls have started making moves already. Gustav Berggren,
that was from next point.
Yeah, from the Polish league. Although I don't believe I think that he's
Norwegian, I believe.
Norwegian, yeah,
or Swedish.
Is joining. I would be very surprised if he is available for Saturday because of the visa process and all that. Although the Red Bulls haven't said one way. Yeah, he's Swedish. It's one way or the other. I wouldn't think he'd be available for this one, but the Red Bulls, often because they're part of a global football group and all that, like they can get a lot of these deals negotiated and you can announce them whenever time. You just can't register them until the window opens, which is happening the day that you guys are listening to this or is open when you're listening to this. But I think that it's interesting to see that like they are a team that is right on the line of the playoffs and they are making moves to strengthen themselves as quickly as possible to get themselves in as good of a position as they can to make it into the postseason and like maybe kind of repeat what they did last year, which was like you sort of like get your way into the postseason and then just make noise that nobody thought you'd make and make it to MLS Cup.
Yeah, and I mean you look at the Red Bull squad of last year, right? That was essentially the role. Didn't have a ton of expectations coming into the playoffs, and they found themselves in MLS Cup with an opportunity to win, right?
Right.
Last, I think, kind of key piece here, Omar Gonzalez, as of now, I think it's slated to start. We'll hear more about Carlos Terran's availability tomorrow, I would imagine. He's obviously back in training. But there's been a little back and forth between Barroso and Dean. Before we go to our actual like score predictions and move on to talk transfers, thoughts on fellas, just general thoughts on what you'd like to see out of that back line as we're going up against another team in New York Red Bull who kind of specialize in that counter press, in winning the ball back in the final third and making you pay for it.
I think that it would be good to just see the Fire try to keep it a little bit simpler than they have some of the time when trying to play out of the back. There's been a couple of nervy moments here and there, and I feel like just the Red Bulls style, they have programmed into their DNA, like a ball like that, they will chase after it the way that like a dog would chase after like a piece of steak like in the middle of the street, right? Like there's just no, like they can't resist it and they can pounce on balls quickly. And so I think that just simplifying that a little bit, I know it's something that Greg has been really committed to. Although a lot of that I think will honestly depend on who the partner is next to Jack Elliott. If it's Carlos Terran, I think that he was starting to show a little bit more promise, although he's been kind of not playing for a couple of months. So like how much rust is there going to be? And if it's Omar Gonzalez, like we know what his experience level is, but we also kind of have seen him do some kind of questionable things with his positioning and why was he screening his own goalie on that shot and that kind of stuff. And so the more that we can just like simplify it and keep things out, although like, let's be honest, like the best way to deal with it is just to score a bunch of goals and keep them out that way.
Amen, I say to that. And definitely the playing from the back has vastly improved since the start of the season. I always think back to the Columbus game where we essentially shot ourselves in the foot 3 times. playing out from the back. It's definitely improved. But yeah, it could definitely be simpler. And what it could also be simpler, in my personal opinion, is playing it forward. Once they move it past the defensive third into the midfield or even to the final third, I feel like sometimes there is a little just bit too much playing around with the ball. I feel like they could be a wee bit more direct.
And I think that that's something that we've seen from, like, I think that's one of the things that's really kind of cursed, like, Jonathan Bambas, and like, I think is the prime example. Like, I think he is looking for the perfect opportunity for the perfect pass, and it doesn't come, and then he kind of finds himself at the end of his run, and then he runs back, and then he does some fancy footwork to keep the ball away from some on-rushing defenders who have made it at that point. But like at that point, the numerical advantage you had is gone, and it's sort of like you're letting the perfect be the enemy of the good, and you really can't do that, especially because the Red Bulls will be pressing high, and that means that they will be leaving space available if you're quick enough to get it in the back. Now, previous editions of the Fire have not really been very good at getting it, other than like maybe they play a ball over the top and it happens to connect to the right guy at the right time. They haven't been incredibly efficient at being able to convert those things into actual chances. This edition of the Fire, I think, can do a lot better. But it's about recognizing that it's a game of like individual touches and seconds, and not about trying to be too fancy and trying to find the exact perfect opportunity for the exact right situation.
Yeah, more shots, less dribbles. I think that's maybe the
Yes, I would rather see like shots go wide or even high than, as my dad would even say, zakiwają się na śmierć. They dribble it to their death, where it just gets the shot gets blocked because of the numbers going back, or is especially like what we saw in Montreal, just a whole lot of takeaways and just dispossessions in that final third. So just do it.
Except for you, Andrew Gutman, because I know you're going to shoot it from 20 yards outside the box. So you have to dribble. So, fellas, let's move on. We'll talk a little transfer. Before we do that, we ask the all-important question that we're always going to ask, that needs to be asked, that begs to be asked, and begs to be answered. And that's, Tim, who you got?
Chicago Fire. I'm going to say 3-1 win. I think that would feel comfortable. I think it would make a lot of people happy. On one hand, I hope that Philip Zinkernagel is getting some rest after having to play midweek and all the work that he's done so far this season. On the other hand, I said what I said before. Like, it would be great to see him get a couple of goal contributions in this one. Maybe, and maybe Bamba gets one too. That would be fantastic to see, and something that I think Fire fans had not really seen enough of.
Yeah, Alan?
Yeah, so first of all, I wanted to go ahead and say this is the last game at Soldier Field until mid-September because of Da Bears. The Fire are going to be playing the next 3 home games at SeatGeek. So it's not until September 13th where we're going to be back at Soldier. So let's leave a lasting impression. And I honestly, I usually try to play it safe with my predictions. I'm going to go a bit more further out. I think the backline's going to, in a similar way, hold out against the press of Red Bull. I want to go ahead and say it's going to be another clean sheet, and there's going to be a bit more goals. I want to say 3-0 for the Fire. And also, before we move on, in the chat, because we were talking about where Gustav Berggren came from, he came from the Polish League. I put in the chat the name of the team they came from. He came from. Do you guys want to give it a shot pronouncing it?
No, we're gonna let you do that. Actually, there's a reason I didn't say the name of the team he came from before. And
do it.
Rakow Szczestowa.
Rakow.
Is that close?
DJ had the first half actually pretty well. Raków Częstochowa. I just wanted to see. I just wanted to see how well you guys would do.
That's where the W turns into a V. Like
Raków Częstochowa. But nonetheless, 3-0 for the Fire. Let's for the last game for a while at Soldier Field. Let's make it a good one.
Yeah, last game at Soldier Field until September, actually, because the next couple are at SeatGeek for the Fire. Yep.
Yeah. I've got Fire 2-1 in a game that does not feel as close as 2-1 might say. Feels like a late goal for New. I just think the Fire are a better team. I think you saw that the last time.
And Red Bull play games close, right? Like they don't get blown out by a lot very often. So fair.
Yeah. DJ, who you got?
I want to Fire win 3-0.
All right.
I think Brady really wants another clean sheet at home.
Let's go, gamers.
I agree. I just don't know if he's going to get it. But the thing that I think a lot of people may have been like sitting here waiting for us to talk about because it's all Fire Twitter cares about. And like, I feel like I see like 15 messages and tweets about it a day, which is like, who are they going to sign? Right. And that is because as you're listening to this, the secondary window at MLS is opened Thursday, July 24th through August 21st. Just a quick recap. You can find all the actual details and the nitty gritty of the Chicago Fire roster situation on menandred97.com. Tim and Alex have put together this really awesome kind of tracker to show exactly what slots are available, who's taking up what role, that kind of thing. So 100% go check that out because it makes it digestible in a way that is still tough to do even in audio form, right? But generally speaking, the Fire have a single senior roster spot available, no supplemental spots, and fairly limited GAM, a little over $200,000 in GAM, which is basically any kind of salary that you'd be bringing in, right? They have two routes they can go down. The first would be to revert back to a 3-3, so 3 DPs, 3 U22 players. Should they do that, they'll get no additional GAM, but they can obviously bring in a designated player. They could also stay with the 2-4 rule, 2 designated players, 4 U22s, which they had for the first half of the season. If they did so, they would have the ability to sign a 4th under 22 player, and they would get an additional $1 million in GAM, which frankly, for a team that needs some GAM, not the worst idea in the world. You can talk about different ideas around trades, around sales, around guys going on waivers, loans, potentially season-ending injury rules. Those kind of things are all possibilities in terms of opening roster spots and also save SCI rules, acquiring players as well.
Yeah.
Generally
and I think
speaking,
that, I go through some of the permutations and details in the coverage on menandred97.com. So I encourage you guys to read that and like feel free to get in touch with questions because I know it makes no sense and drives you crazy before it does start making sense. But like I think that the overall picture is like the Fire do have some flexibility to make a move or two probably by the time that everything shakes out one way or the other before the end of the window. They don't have unlimited flexibility and they can't spend big on multiple players just the way that things are right now. But they do have the capability to sign at least one, like a designated player without any, further moves other than if it's an international one that would, need maybe a little bit more maneuvering. And they can likely add one more quality piece, which I think is kind of where I would set the expectations for this window. If the Fire can add up 2 pieces, I think that's a successful window for the Fire.
Before we talk a little bit more in detail, the one method we didn't bring up, I don't know that the Fire will be ones who take advantage of it, but it's new to MLS in 2025. It was available for the first window. Tim, can you give us a 15 seconds on how the cash for player, cash for transfer, cash for system works?
So it works sort of like a cash trade or like a cash sale would work outside the league, except it's within MLS. So before, when teams would send GAM for a player, they had to have the GAM and they then, had to basically like spend the money buying the player and fit them in the salary cap. This way they can actually send like cold hard cash, like an actual check goes from one team to the other, which before it didn't. That gives teams additional flexibility. And we've seen it with some fairly big names moving throughout the league. And I think that that's for the foreseeable future where it's likely to continue of you're going to see DPs that may not be fitting, say like in their exact team, like with the team's current setup and all that, find a new home. And that's probably the way that we'll likely see it most. And then probably like mid to high end pieces of the roster where they're looking for a new deal and the other team just doesn't have the flexibility to do it or doesn't really fit in their plans with who the manager is and all of that. And they're looking for a new home. And it's nice in a way, like, guys like Dan Jovic, who's now in Sporting Kansas City, was on a U22 deal with the Galaxy. They would have loved to keep him. We saw what he did in MLS Cup. He didn't really fit in. He fit in perfectly with their system and all of that, but he didn't fit in with their salary capabilities because he was getting too old to be on a U22 contract. And historically, those guys, there was no chance whatsoever they'd stick around MLS because there was no way for the Galaxy to get compensated for him and for the other team to sign him and fit him under the cap in any way that made sense for both teams. And now that mechanism exists. Now, I don't really know that I would expect the Fire to take advantage of it here, just with the profiles of some of the things. It wouldn't be the craziest thing in some ways. And if that happens, unlike a player sale outside the league, a cash for, which is I think what most people are calling them, or a cash for player transfer, MLS teams have the opportunity, like they have the option of keeping the player on their existing deal rather than signing them to a new deal, or they can sign them to a new deal as part of the deal. If they sign them for a new deal, there's some cap implications for both sides. Like if there's a player that's not a DP and you want to make them a designated player, that needs to be accommodated for, and it has certain implications for the team receiving and like what they can do with the game. But like that's all kinds of technicalities. It basically gives one more mechanism for keeping talented players in the league.
It's moments like these where I'm happy that Tim is a part of this podcast to explain for those non-MLS sickos with the incredible roster rules that we have in this league. So round of applause for Mr. Tim in that explanation.
Absolutely. That and his good looks are why we keep him around. Yeah,
it's a face built for podcasting, everybody.
It's an interesting wrinkle for a club like the Fire who don't have a ton of GAM available. So any GAM they do free up will be valuable in terms of what you can actually add salary wise. So do think there's some interesting implications there. The question I think comes down to, I think everybody wants the big designated player either in central midfield or potentially adding to the attack in a more like a 10 capability. I'll just to kick us off a little bit. I hate that move. Not hate. I don't like that move. Tim, you and I talked on an episode earlier this year about I personally would love to see the Fire stick with the 2-4 for the rest of this year, invest in another young player who can assist out, and hopefully have them fully into the squad next year. Move on one of the current U22s. We've seen a lot of rumbling around Brian Gutierrez, and then have 3 good U22s enveloped into the squad, bring in a designated player in the winter. In my mind, that role is center back. Where are you seeing the biggest need and the best way to acquire?
Center back is definitely what Greg Berhalter has mentioned publicly. I think it's not the only position of need, but I think it's the obvious one. I think it's probably unlikely that it's a position that the Fire would use a DP slot on, and potentially a U22, because a lot of the time the profile that you're looking for, like it's not something you get from a 21-year-old a lot. I think that if the Fire do elect to stay with 2 DPs and like 4 U22s, you don't have to use all 4. The Fire only have 3 slots that are used. Kutias's loan cancels that out. Then I think that's what you do with the $1 million in GAM you get, and you look either for somebody in the league that you can make a move for, or a player from outside the league. And there's things you can do to like sort of like manipulate the cap hit over the course of their new contract, where that would make, I think, even a very good center back feasible. I believe that Walker Zimmerman is the only DP center back in the league at this point in time. So that just shows how rare it is for that to be the case. I think the other thing, though, the bigger context is the team isn't. The moves are not being made for 2025. It's going to strengthen the team in 2025, but I think that the team is going to make moves other than like maybe if they get a guy on loan, with an eye for what does it mean for 2026, 2027, and I think especially going into 2028, being a championship caliber team the year that you open your new stadium. And I think that it's right to sort of like build with that in mind. And that's why I agree with you on the sticking with 2 DPs for this one. I think that the additional GAM, $1 million in GAM is real money the Fire can use and helps get them out of a hole. Obviously, a lot of that also depends on like if they get a sale, they can get up to $3 million in GAM from that, and that gives them a lot more flexibility. But I think that you want that third DP slot to be a real difference maker. And some of the names that have been linked with the Fire previously have been names that would be a difference maker, I think, at least as much off the pitch as they would on it. Like I think Neymar, if I'm being honest, probably a bigger impact for his marketing ability than what he would have necessarily done with the Fire if it had worked out. Kevin De Bruyne, I think, would have done maybe not quite the same marketing boost, but still a huge name in the game. But I think he would have been more of an on-pitch impact while also being the kind of like caliber of leader that I think a lot of teams don't have between that combination of skill and like experience and what he's done in his career. But I don't think that they're unlike what we saw with Georg Heitz in 2020, I don't think that this potential of a third DP is burning a hole in Greg Berhalter's pocket. I think it wants to be the right player for years going forward, rather than just, this is a way we can spend some money and maybe make our team better, and I'm not sure about it. So we're going to go with a guy we're not 100% confident in just to fill it.
Amen. I say to that. And the last part that you mentioned is something that I'm just happy a lot of MLS teams, Miami, are going towards that idea of DP players being players that actually provide more on the pitch, or at least equally on the pitch, off the pitch, than they're there to sell jerseys. And I really like the 242, having the additional under 22 with the million in GAM other than the DP. So that way we can, like you mentioned, build towards a championship side, towards, the new stadium opening. And I'm really excited to see what the Fire do, especially if they stick on with the additional U22. Because
they don't have to use the U22 slot, right? Like they can keep it open and just use the GAM and flexibility that way, or you can get another U22 that you think is maybe going to stick around if you think that there's another of one of them you're going to be moving on.
Yes, stick around. Those are the two words I was looking for, because with a lot of these DPs, one of my biggest fears is always that the fact that they're just going to move on so quickly, either because they're aging or they're just, looking for a new adventure, aka Shaqiri, or an old adventure in that case. The play is someone that will stick around, and that's why I especially love maybe the possibility of that U22, someone that can, grow in the next few seasons up when, and then we get the new stadium. Maybe they'll move away from a U22 deal. I'm just excited, honestly, to see what oh my God, I almost said Georg Heitz. That's exactly who I wasn't exactly happy to see when he was in charge of the squad. What Greg Berhalter, what Triple G is going to do. Oh my days, I'm losing my voice. That's how excited I am about this.
Yeah, the interesting kind of wrinkle to me, and it kind of combines. Tim, we went back and forth on this, so you're welcome to also give your point of view on why it's probably not super likely that this happens, right? But I've been thinking about it all day, so I'd like to get my take off, if I may. The idea behind that 2-4, I kind of made the case earlier in the year about the idea of, like you guys said, you bring in a U22, they stick around, they get 3 months here, not free of pressure, but free of the kind of pressure and expectations that will come from a team that is not just expected to make the playoffs next year, but maybe win a playoff game or two, be competitive in the East, actually threat for MLS Cup, as opposed to just like, gosh, I hope we get in and that's all that matters. You hit the ground running a bit next year, whereas a guy who, if they really did want to bring in a third DP who is a big name, like Kevin De Bruyne, is not going to need the same runway that Jay Davia needs, right? That's the easiest way to say it. But also, Tim, we talked about the timeline on Christopher Cupps and what it would mean for him not to need to be the day one center back next year. And that's where the idea is interesting to me of, if you free up that extra $1 million in GAM, that lets you go out and potentially use that cash for player system on a guy who's late 20s, early 30s, maybe 1 year left on his deal, that you can give whomever $3 million cash for, give him a slight pay bump, and you still have 600, 500, 400,000 left in GAM to make an additional move if you need to. That to me is where you're making that move allows you so much more flexibility, not purely just in the GAM, but what you're able to do with it from there. I think it makes the most sense. And we're all kind of saying the same thing for different reasons.
Yeah, it could, like, ways, I think that, right. Like, I think that could be a possibility. And again, it would have to be, a lot of these guys, promises are not worth the paper they're written on in sports or anywhere else, right? Like, they're, players want contracts. And if the idea is that a player is looking for an upgrade on their current deal, and they're not going to get it where they are, which is part of why they're looking for a move, saying, we'll give you a new deal, but we can't right now because of our cap situation. You can maybe sell some guys on that, but I think a lot of the time it's kind of hard. It's a hard thing because it's like, no. Like, you're going to show it to me. Like, you're going to prove this to me. And the Fire wouldn't necessarily be able to offer the kinds of a new deal that some of these players would be looking for. But I think in the right situation, you could probably sell someone on it. And you also, of course, have the, like, if it's someone in the last year of their deal or on loan, like we're seeing with Kwame, there's a little bit of a prove it aspect, right? Of like, look, we think you can be one of the best whatevers in the league. But we unfortunately right now can't give you a deal that would reflect that. But then again, like, now you've got a chance to show it.
Yeah. And, we talked about last week the idea of an extension for Jack Elliott. I would expect to see that at year's end, just makes the most sense. But if you can, do you try and put something into the works early just to kind of put that goodwill out into the universe, right? Like, here's a guy who took a chance coming here, and we took a chance on him with the promise of, if you do well, you'll be rewarded. We have rewarded him, right? And it's kind of just telegraphing to the rest of the league, we're here to do business in the right ways and for the right reasons. I think would be the hope there. Not too much in the way of actual physical rumors for the Fire. There's been a very tight-lipped organization since taking over. There was some rumors this week coming out about Patrick Berg's central midfielder from Bodo Glimt. Seems to be nothing to that, Tim. Both you and Alex have kind of maybe not reported, but strongly indicated that is a little bit of a nothing burger, especially for the price that was being quoted, around $12 million US.
Yeah. And to be clear, so like, this is the same club that Philip Zinkernagel was at previously, which is also the club that Fire sporting director Greg Broughton had spent a number of years at, kind of like going through the academy before, spending a little bit of time back in his native England before joining the Fire. And so there are connections between the clubs. But I think that in terms of like the lack of rumors, I realize it's frustrating for a lot of people. Greg has been running a pretty tight ship, and like he's on one hand been pretty open about the pursuits of some of the bigger names that we've heard. Like we've got questions on the record where he's given us some real answers and things to chew on about like pursuing Neymar, pursuing Kevin De Bruyne, and how that went, and the way that the Fire approached getting those big names to maybe consider coming to Chicago. So he's been open with that, but in terms of rumors, we really haven't gotten anything out of it. And I think in some ways that's a reflection of the fact that it's a new front office. Everyone's pulling the same direction, and running a tight ships don't leak, and ships that leak often don't make it to the destination they're supposed to get it to. Right. So I think in some ways that's
ships.
Yeah. Exactly. And like, that's one of those things, like, and sometimes it's very rare, but like in the past, sometimes reporting around deals has scuttled deals if the wrong thing gets said or the wrong way, or like someone has their own interpretation of it and whatever. Because it ends up being a game of telephone of like, often the sources that we in the media have are not the person who directly knows all of this. And then it becomes a game of telephone of somebody hearing something secondhand, and you're trying to get another version of it from somebody, and the numbers you're hearing line up, but it's, and it may not be the accurate, or like that may have been where the negotiations started, but it's not where they are today. All those things happen. I think it's really important to say the Kevin De Bruyne rumor, the Neymar rumor, and the Berg rumor, none of those originated from anywhere around Chicago, and they did not originate from like people that cover MLS. They came, I think, pretty clearly from people either that are covering, in the case of the Berg rumor, covering that team. And in the case of some of the others, it seemed like it was, agents saying things. The people that talk about rumors are typically teams say it on background, or you can't say that I told you this, but they say directly to the media, like, we're looking to do this, this is something that we want to make happen, to drum up interest sometimes, and sometimes to sort of like use it as leverage. Yeah. Well, no, not to get clicks, but like literally to use it as leverage for somebody. And then the other thing is agents talk and players, like, and like sometimes people around the player talk. I think that was a lot of the Neymar thing, of a lot of people that like kind of hang out with Neymar or wanted to act like they did, were giving their 2 cents about lots of different parts of it before it was all said and done. And I think reading between the lines, I think you can sort of get a feeling of where the Berg rumor was coming from. The reported transfer fee would have been about $12 million US, which would definitely make him a designated player. Well into it. Not that transfer market values are ever anything necessarily close to what a player would actually go for, but it's double the transfer market value. It would also be the 5th highest sale out of Norway in the country's history, and the highest by far for a player over 23 years old. So by like a factor of 3, I think that like a couple of guys went for like 3 or 4 million. So
it would make a lot more
that,
sense if it was 12 million kroner, right? That's
right, like $1.2 million, right? Like that's something that would make him a TAM player, and that would be like the right level. The other thing is, I know Philip Zinkernagel has like lit, MLS on fire, and is currently playing in the All-Star game and all that. But generally speaking, every year Bodo Glimt sells a number of players to other teams in Europe and around the world, and they typically don't do very well. Zinkernagel was only there for, a couple cups of coffee, basically. Players that are there longer, Bodo Glimt is like it's not quite like it's a farmers league outside of Bodo Glimt, but like they are the biggest team. They are the dominant team in the league. They have the most financial resources. They have the best academy. They have the best scouting network within to get people into the country, and they can replace players. Like they can do basically whatever they want to do within their means for that squad. And so that means if a guy doesn't exactly fit, they don't keep on playing in the squad. And because of that, they've been able to win their league. They've been able to get outsized results in Europe. But you take someone away from that environment, and a lot of them don't do that well. That's not to say that Berg would not do fantastic in MLS or any of that, but just that there's reason to be skeptical of it from that perspective as well. And between those things and the fact that it pretty clearly, when there's other teams that are rumored, let's put it this way, other teams in other leagues that are rumored, or other teams in the same league that are rumored, and it's pretty clearly coming from sources around the team. I think it's kind of obvious what's going on here, and it's about, hey, these other guys want them. So remember that offer that we were talking about? That number's going to be at the high end of it now, and that kind of a thing. And again, this is not based on any inside information from the Fire. I haven't checked with anybody about this. I didn't really feel like it's something that I would have needed to, but that just is sort of like the way that the world works.
Yeah. The world also thinks that MLS has unlimited pockets, which in a way it does, but the roster rules don't allow for it, right? Tim, you saw a little back and forth I had with some Queens Park Rangers supporters who felt they were going to get $7 million for Charlie Kelman from Charlotte FC. It's like, guys, I need to explain to you why no, that's not happening. I promise. So it's a little bit of, to your point,
he's Charlie Kelman, dude.
Well, yeah. Look, yeah, man. He's Charlie Kelman.
You get that. You even get that from agents. It's something that the Fire have kind of been immune from a little bit, just because they haven't really been that active in the global market in the same way, and they haven't been getting mentioned the same way in recent years. It used fans that have been around a long time. It used to happen all the time. You would just get silly season rumors about the Fire being interested in some guy that nobody on the Fire's front office had ever heard of.
Well, and now you have, you were second in line for Kevin De Bruyne. So it's all of a sudden, a big pleasure.
And, right. And on top of the Neymar thing, and that I think is what is generating the silly season. It's look, if the Fire can afford Neymar, the Fire can afford $12 million for this guy. That's just logical. Right. And it's true, but not aware of the roster rules and stuff. And MLS is just such Saudi is the other one that is you can just say a guy's linked to Saudi and suddenly expect a lot more money for them if you do it the right way, I think is the expectation, because Saudi teams have unlimited boatloads of money. And MLS isn't quite in the same caliber, because no one's going to say, oh yeah, they're going to pay $200 million for this guy. But it's still part of that conversation of, I've seen MLS teams spend lots of money on guys before. This is an MLS team. They could spend lots of money on this guy.
Yeah. You knew the rumor was trash when they said, well, they want 11, but Chicago said they're only willing to spend 10. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. That I think we're kind of reaching our natural conclusion on it. We won't make you listen to us yap too much longer. Last thing I want to do before we wrap, and I didn't put this in the outline because we weren't just going to be dudes naming guys naming dudes, but I do want everybody, give me one guy. Name one dude. Just tell me who you want to see put on red for the second half of the season. Tim, who'd you like to see? Just realistic, unrealistic. Prefer realistic, but unrealistic is okay too.
That Yamal kid, no, I'm kidding. Realistically, he's looking pretty good.
What's his name? Endrick? That's not bad.
He's young enough for a U22 deal, so he fits in the roster that way. It would be a $200,000 cap hit. That's it. No, realistically, I'm trying to come up with names of good center backs that would be available. And I can't off the top of my head from within MLS. I feel like you mentioned Joel Waterman, and I thought I don't think it's going to happen, but at the same time, I know Montreal just issued a statement saying we're changing. We promise, just stay with us.
A 5 a.m. statement saying they were going to rebuild.
Christ,
the day before
it's literally the message. It's like a long text to some person you're dating saying you're sorry that you sent it at 5 a.m. when you're hungover and can't really remember all the details of the things that happened, but you just remember that you had a fight.
Oh my
But like, I feel like Montreal has like everything has a price there, and if that's the mood that you're in, a little bit of like we're going to be substantially changing what we're doing, you can sell people on here's a guy that is good and that we love, but like we're going to sell him, and you know that we'll use that money to improve. I'll believe the other part of it with Montreal when I see it, but like that would be like we saw what he could do a week ago. That would be a good kind of name. It'd be affordable, and I think that that's a workable name within MLS.
Yeah, Alan. Anybody top of your mind?
I've said this on a few episodes, or many back when we talked transfer windows. I would love to see another Polish person. That's something my dad always keeps bringing up whenever we talk to Fire, is that when the Fire first started, that it was predominantly Polish players and whatnot.
Alan, there's a free agent Polish striker out there named Kasper Szybylko.
Okay. Who's
he just left Lugano. He's available on a free.
There's
another guy that you can get on waivers. Mateusz Klich.
Mateusz Klich.
That wouldn't be terrible.
I wouldn't be against that.
So I still don't know because he's a DP. The DP spot is currently being held by DC United, which are the team that he's signed with. He's now on waivers, placed there by Atlanta United, who had him on the roster, even though he wasn't a DP for them, which is just wild because they don't get salary cap relief for it. Okay. And like, I haven't checked this, but like you could conceivably get the guy for $100,000 in salary cap space. I don't know.
Real Bradley Beal type beat. All right, Alan, give us your guy.
So sorry, Alan. Your goal is a poll. What's the poll you want?
And not only if it was a Polish player, but a Polish player from my favorite Polish team, Lech Poznań. And that player, and since we were talking about center back, there is a 24-year-old Polish center back who plays for Lech called Mateusz Skrzypczak. Because first of all, it would be very funny to see people try to pronounce his name, and he's a young, fairly decent center back who plays for my favorite Polish team as well, and he is Polish. So it would be a very nice thing for me personally.
Up the left, am I right?
And for my other and the other Kolejarz fans out there, which translates.
I mean, we all got Kasper Szybylko after we had enough time to practice with it. We'd have no problem with that. We could do that.
Sure. Just like how well you guys did pronouncing Raków Częstochowa, but
I'm not saying that we can read it. I'm saying that we can learn what it's pronounced, and then that's how learning happens, Alan. You're an educator. You should know this.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let
DJ trying to shame your learners here.
Yes,
let DJ give a name. Okay, everybody. I'll mute you. Kind of need that freaking podium from around the horn.
I'm not gonna lie. I kind of waited to see what Alan said because there was one or two possibilities that Alan and I have discussed before, and he didn't pick it. So I'm still saying Son Heung-min.
Oh, Sonny, he's
going to LAFC.
So that's why I'd rather him come to the Fire. Why do you have to go to that?
That is true. I would immediately get a Son jersey if he came to the Fire.
That'd be fun.
He would also be the first.
Fun to have Son.
He'll also be the first Asian-born player from. I think he's the first Asian-born player. He would be. I'm not sure, but no, he wouldn't because Rafashio was born in Asia. Never mind.
Oh man, that is the funniest trivia fact of all time. He was born in Saudi Arabia.
He was born in Saudi Arabia. I don't know if that's how that works.
I mean, there have been other players that are Asian playing for the Fire. They just were not born in Asia. And so after a while, you start getting into this weird thing where it's like, how do you qualify for something? It's like being born in Asia doesn't count. Being Asian doesn't count.
Guys, if we want to talk about this, we have to have Jiggly on the show. Shout out Jiggly. We'll move on to mine. Mine is, I think, the most pragmatic, if I do say so myself. I thought this out a lot today. Had some downtime at work. This is going to be a weird name, but it's Derek Williams, center back from Atlanta United. They just signed another center back from, I think, the second league in Spain, 2 Liga or whatever they call it. He's on a 1 year plus a club option. He's 32 years old. He's played in the championship. He's the guy where, like, can he be the second best center back on this team? 100%. Can he also be the second or third best center back on this team to rotate with Christopher Cupps next year? 100%. It just makes a lot of sense. You give him a pretty moderately sized raise without breaking into TAM threshold. So like you go to that 2-4, you give Atlanta $1 million or whatever for for Derek Williams. He comes here, plays for 2 years, and then heads out. I think that to me would be a slam dunk, personally. Greg, you're welcome to hire me as a consultant. I will take a very wealthy salary, actually. Anything else we want to wrap in?
It's going to be Neymar or John. You can't afford both.
You're gonna have to pay me. You have to pay me Jonathan Dean money, baby.
I will take 40K a year to do his job.
I'll take half a Klondike bar.
I don't know, man. You get your ass kicked out there.
And this is why collective bargaining is useful. So you avoid going from millions of dollars to thousands of dollars to half a Klondike bar.
Exactly. What happened to the other half? Anyway, that feels as good a place as any to wrap it. This is one of our longer episodes, even though we all said it was going to be lots to talk about this week, though. From the All-Star game to New York Red Bull to transfer window to me being the new head of scouting. Chicago Fire. Thank you so much for being here, for listening, for making this all worthwhile for us. As always, keep an eye peeled onto the website, meninred97.com. That's where you'll find all the latest transfer and roster updates. Tim does a very good job of making it as digestible as possible, although it's MLS, so it will never actually be digestible. It's kind of like Army food. It's food, but not really. Along with that, keep your eyes peeled on the socials at meninred97. That's where you can keep up to date on all the kind of comings and goings around. We'll keep you updated there, Twitter, Instagram, all that kind of fun stuff as well. And of course, we will be back after the New York Red Bulls matchup, and we'll also be doing our best to keep you as updated as possible with some quick fire episodes should the Fire make an exciting new signing, and we are days away from an episode or something like that. Hopefully, maybe with some guests in the future. I don't know. We're trying to do more of that. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for listening, making this all enjoyable and worthwhile while we yap about players we'd like to sign who will probably never play for the Fire. For Tim and Alan and DJ, and for our illustrious producer, Austin, who is now back from vacation. So I'm sorry, Austin, but you actually have to do it this time. Thank you so much for joining us around the bonfire, and come on, you men in red.